last but not the least, let's learn the general safety requirements for testing of consumers' installations. Upon receipt of an application for a new or additional supply of electricity and before connecting the supply or reconnecting the same after a period of 6 months, the supplier shall either test the installation himself or accept the test results submitted by the consumer when the same has been duly signed by the licensed elected contractor. The supplier shall maintain a record of test results obtained at each supply point to a consumer in a Schedule 5. Result of such inspection and test, the supplier is installation is likely to be dangerous, he shall serve on the applicant a notice in writing requiring him to make such modifications as are necessary to render the installation safe and may refuse to connect or reconnect the supply until the required modifications have been completed. This brings us to the end of the first module. Let us begin with the second module. Objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to identify general conditions relating to supply and use of electricity and list safety provisions for electrical installations and apparatus of voltage not exceeding 650 volts. General conditions relating to supply and use of electricity. General conditions relating to supply and use of electricity. First, let us learn about the precautions against leakage before connection. The supplier shall not connect with his works the installation or apparatus on the premises of any applicant for supply, unless he is reasonably satisfied that the connection will not at the time of making the connection cause a leakage from that installation or apparatus of a magnitude detrimental to safety, which shall be checked by measuring the installation resistance as under. All equipment shall have the insulation resistance IR value as stipulated in the relevant Indian standards. On application of 500 volt DC between each live conductor and earth for a period of 1 minute, the insulation resistance of installation and equipment of voltage not exceeding 650 volt shall be at least 1 mega ohm or as specified in the relevant Indian standard. On application of 2.5 kV DC between each live conductor and earth for a period of 1 minute, the insulation resistance of installation and equipment of voltage exceeding 650 volt but not exceeding 33 kV shall be at least 5 mega ohm or as specified in the relevant Indian standard. If the supplier declines to make a connection under the provisions of Sub-Regulation 1, he shall convey to the applicant the reasons in writing for so declining. General conditions relating to supply and use of electricity. Next, we will learn about the conditions related to leakage on consumers' premises. If the electrical inspector or the supplier has reasons to believe that there is leakage in the system of a consumer which is likely to affect injuriously the use of electricity by the supplier or by other persons, or which is likely to cause danger, he may give the consumer notice in writing that he desires to inspect and test the consumer's installation. If on such notice being given, the consumer does not give all reasonable facilities for inspection and testing of his installation, or when an insulation resistance of the consumer's installation is so low as to prevent safe use of electricity, the supplier may, and if directed so to do by the electrical inspector, shall discontinue the supply of electricity to the installation, but only after giving to the consumer 48 hours notice in writing of disconnection of supply, and shall not recommend the supply until he or the electrical inspector is satisfied that the cause of the leakage has been removed. Now, let us understand the general conditions relating to supply and use of electricity. The electricity shall not be supplied transformed, converted, inverted, or used or continued to be supplied, transformed, converted, inverted, or used unless the conditions contained in sub-regulations 2 to 8 are complied with. The following controls of requisite capacity to carry and break the current shall be placed as near as possible after the point of commencement of supply so as to be readily accessible and capable of being easily operated to completely isolate the supply to the installation, such equipment being in addition to any equipment installed for controlling individual circuits or apparatus, namely a linked switch with fuse or a circuit breaker by consumers of voltage which does not exceed 650 volt. A linked switch with fuse or a circuit breaker by a consumer of voltage exceeding 650 volt but not exceeding 33 kilovolt having aggregate installed transformer or apparatus capacity up to 1000 kVA to be supplied at voltage up to 11 kilovolt and 2500 kVA at higher voltages above 11 kV and not exceeding 33 kV. A circuit breaker by consumers at voltage exceeding 650 volt but not exceeding 33 kilovolt, having an aggregate installed transformer and apparatus capacity above 1000 kVA and supplied at voltage up to 11 kV and above 2500 kVA at higher voltages above 11 kV and not exceeding 33 kV. A circuit breaker by a consumer of voltage exceeding 33 kV, provided that where the point of commencement of supply and the consumer apparatus are near each other, one linked switch with fuse or circuit breaker near the point of commencement of supply shall be considered sufficient. In case of every transformer, the following shall be provided, namely, on primary side for transformers, a linked switch with fuse or circuit breaker of adequate capacity, provided that the linked switch on the primary side of the transformer may be of such capacity as to carry the full load current and to break only the magnetizing current of the transformer, provided further that for all the transformers having a capacity of 5000 kVA and above installed before the year 2000 and having a capacity 1000 kVA and above installed in or after the year 2000, a circuit breaker shall be provided. Provided also that the linked switch on the primary side of the transformer shall not require for the unit auxiliary transformer and generator transformer. In respect of all transformers installed in or after the year 2000, on the secondary side of all transformers, a circuit breaker of adequate rating shall be installed. Provided that for suppliers transformers of capacity below 1000 kVA, a linked switch with fuse or circuit breaker of adequate rating shall be installed on secondary side, except in the case of composite control gear, designed as a unit. Each distinct circuit is to be protected against excess energy by means of suitable cutout or a circuit breaker of adequate breaking capacity, suitably located and so constructed as to prevent danger from overheating, arcing or scattering of hot metal when it comes into operation, and to permit for ready renewal of the fusible metal of the cutout without danger. The supply of electricity to each motor or a group of motors or other apparatus meant for operating one particular machine shall be controlled by a suitable linked switch or a circuit breaker or an emergency tripping device with manual reset of requisite capacity placed in such a position as to be adjacent to the motor or a group of motors or other apparatus readily accessible to and easily operated by the person in charge, and so connected in the circuit that by its means all supply of electricity can be cut off from the motor or group of motors or apparatus from any regulating switch, resistance of other device associated therewith. All insulating materials shall be chosen with special regard to the circumstances of the proposed use, and their mechanical strength shall be sufficient for their purpose, and so far as is practicable of such a character or so protected as to maintain adequately their insulating property under all working conditions in respect of temperature and moisture. Adequate precautions shall be taken to ensure that no live parts are so exposed as to cause danger, and every consumer shall use all reasonable means to ensure that where electricity is supplied by a supplier, no person other than the supplier shall interfere with service lines and apparatus placed by the supplier on the premises of the consumer. Now, let us list some provisions for supply and use of electricity in multi-storied building more than 15 meters in height. The connected load and voltage of supply, above which inspection is to be carried out by an electrical inspector for a multi-storied building of more than 15 meters height, shall be notified by the appropriate government before making an application for commencement of supply or recommencement of supply after an installation has been disconnected for a period of 6 months or more. The owner or occupier of a multi-storied building shall give not less than 30 days notice in writing to the electrical inspector, specify therein the particulars of installation, and the supply of electricity shall not be commenced or recommenced within this period without the approval in writing of the electrical inspector. The supplier or owner of the installation shall provide at the point of commencement of supply a suitable isolating device with cutout or breaker to operate on all phases except neutral in the 3-phase, 4-wire circuit and fixed in a conspicuous position at not more than 1.70 meters above the ground, so as to completely isolate the supply to the building in case of emergency. The owner or occupier of a multi-storied building shall ensure that electrical installations and works inside the building are carried out and maintained in such a manner as to prevent danger due to shock and fire hazards, and the installation is carried out in accordance with the relevant codes of practice. No other service pipes and cables shall be taken along the ducts provided for laying power cables, and all ducts provided for power cables and other services shall be provided with fire barrier at each floor crossing.